Okay. Welcome. This is ILL 101 Basics and your panel question and answer, which is what we're really going to actually leave a lot of time for. So we're just going to kind of run through a really quick rundown of interlibrary loans and the very basics. I guess it's kind of a quick question. First of all, how many academic library people are here? And how many, so public, special? Okay. So I'm going to try to make it a little bit for both. For both of those, some things may be more relevant to the public libraries. Like, are you guys on Evergreen? No, you're on Evergreen. Okay. So we don't know a lot about that because we're all in academic libraries, so we don't use Evergreen. But you can always jump in and chime in, and if there's something you want to say about it, that would be great. So anyway, I'm going to start the introductions of my co-speakers with me, and as this, we'll talk for a little bit, and then we're going to throw it out for you guys to ask lots of questions. So first of all, I'm going to introduce them, and then I'll introduce myself. So first, next to me is Satoria Tomberlin. Satoria has worked in interlibrary loan for 10 years. She came to IU Indianapolis last year from Berry College in Georgia. And so I'm going to say a little bit about IU Indianapolis and what their ILL department is like. And a little bit about IU Indianapolis in general. IU Indianapolis has about 25,000 students between undergraduate and graduate students. Last year, how many requests they filled between borrowing and lending was about 22,600 requests. So that's how much they filled. That wasn't how much was requested of them, but how much they filled. Her department has one full-time librarian, which is Satoria. They have one full-time staff person. And then they have 2 students who can work up to 20 hours per week. But I think from what Satoria had said is they're putting in time in other departments as well. But so that's what her staffing is like. Then next to her is Holly Mosman. Holly has been in interlibrary loan for 21 plus years. I'm going in order of how long we've all been doing this. Holly is with Indiana State University. Indiana State University has about 8,300 students between undergraduate and graduate students. Holly's department consists of Holly, full-time staff person. She has one other staff person who works 8 hours per week, and then student help of 38 hours per week between multiple student hours. And last year, Holly's department filled, not how many were requested of them, filled about 5,550 requests. And then I'm Maureen Kennedy. I'm from Indiana University, South Bend. I've been doing, so they said order of how long we've been doing it. I've been doing interlibrary loan for about 25 plus years, first part-time and then full-time. And Indiana University, South Bend has about 4,600 students between our graduate and undergraduate. The department consists of me, and I have student help of about 6 to 8 hours per week. Last year, once again, between what we filled, between borrowing and lending, we did about 8,300 requests. And in addition to doing interlibrary loan, I'm also the backup circulation supervisor, and I do reserves. So that's a little bit about us to get started. And our plan today is to talk about interlibrary loan. This is going to be borrowing, lending, document delivery, purchase on demand, and international issues. So we're really going to hope at the end that you're going to have lots of questions for us, because if you add up all of our experience here, we've got about 55 plus years. So I've just got a couple more years on that in my age. But obviously they do not. So I'm going to start today with borrowing. My little clicker is not working. Okay, so basic things about borrowing. What can you borrow? I often do a little lecture for our students, and I tell them I will borrow anything that another library is willing to lend me. But so basic things of that are books, ebooks. Yes, we are starting to be able to get some ebooks through interlibrary loan. I think there's a session later on e-borrowing as well of ebooks. Journal articles, book chapters, AV materials, microfilm, microfiche. As I said, anything another library is willing to lend. Like just the other day, we lent out an Xbox game, of which the person who was getting it was like, they realized that's like 15 years old or something. But I was sending it out. So as I said, so borrowing, getting anything that another library is willing to lend you. Um, we use the system Iliad, and Iliad sits and talks to OCLC, which Tony did a great job of talking a lot about the OCLC services. A lot of you might use WorldShare for interlibrary loan. As you said, you guys Evergreen. And some now will be using the share program because that's bumped back up again, which I've definitely noticed a lot more share requests in the last few weeks. So there's multiple software programs out there that interlibrary loan that you can use to process interlibrary loan requests. And I was going to say in the next session, the breakout session 2, Roger's going to be doing a whole session on all the different interlibrary loan software programs. So that's in breakout session 2. So how does borrowing, and one of the things we want to say on here is the communication throughout the whole time with your patron is very key to borrowing. So here's a basic overflow of borrowing. And borrowing, when I'm talking about this, is borrowing of physical items. The next section I'll talk about is borrowing of journal articles, anything that doesn't need to be returned. This would be the process for something that needs to be returned to another library. So first thing is, your patron says, hey, I want something. That's up to you how you want to get that request. Ours comes in electronically. It looked like that Tony was showing that really nice new thing for WorldShare, their web form. Or you can take paper requests. Sometimes I take it verbally over the phone and I just enter it into my system. If I've been working with a patron, I might just, as I said, take it over the phone and enter it in. So that's your patron's going to say, hey, I want this. Then the next thing you're going to do is you want to verify that you actually don't own this item. If you do, then you're going to get that for them, and that becomes more of that document delivery. You're going to get it, process it, and get it to them. Or you're going to determine maybe you do own it, but it's checked out. So then you might determine, do you want to place a hold on your copy, which I would suspect the public libraries are probably more likely to do that. Academics, I asked them, were more likely to go out and try to interlibrary loan, even though the item is checked out from our library, rather than trying to get it back, because sometimes that takes forever. But as I said, I know public libraries would probably put a hold on it. But you're going to go ahead and you're going to check your catalog first. And then you're going to verify the citation, and then you're going to go in and you're going to look for bibliographic records, whether you're using it through Evergreen, whether you're using OCLC. You're going to look to see who owns it out there. You're going to then create a borrowing string, and you're going to send out that request to those other libraries, and the lending library is going to say yes. Or if they say no, then it gets moved on, and it keeps going until someone says, yes, indeed, I can send it. You're going to unpack that item. You're going to notify the patron that it is available. The patron picks it up and uses the item. Then the big thing is once the item comes back to you, you want to make sure that you have returned that item. You want to say, hey, I'm returning this, because this request can't get filled or it can't get closed out until it gets back to that lending library and they can say, yes, I physically got this item back. So you do want to make sure there's that return thing, especially with the share program now. Make sure you contact them and say, hey, we have returned this book. So that way, when they come back to us, we can get them updated. So that's sort of the basics of the borrowing workflow for a physical item. So this is more your borrowing articles and document delivery. So document delivery is kind of an extension of borrowing. The patron has made the request, but instead of sending it out to other libraries, you might fill it from your own collection. So you do want to check that first. Or you could also go to, you could find it open access, or document delivery suppliers, of which are Get It Now. And then I have Reprints Desk, which according to Holly has just changed their name, Research Solutions, which they have all the nice stuff, the swag that was downstairs. But so that has changed like just in the last couple of weeks, because when I saw the stuff, I'm like, hey, this doesn't say Reprints Desk. Or you could get it from Publisher. But those document providers do cost more. The Get It Now service is through Copyright Clearance Center. Those can generally run somewhere between like $20 and maybe up to $80. So I tend to use them as a last resort. Okay, so The borrowing, and as I said, this is for items that you're never going to return to another library. Once again, your patron asks for the article, however they get it to you. You're going to first check your policy. You're going to check your catalog and what you have access to make sure you don't have it. And then you might want to check open access materials. As I said, and then if you do want to go to a document supplier, you could at this point go that direction rather than going out to other libraries. As I said, I use it last resort because of the cost. I tend to try to get free libraries first because I'm a member of Elvis. And so anyway, but if you do have it or you're finding it open access, you're going to get that item for your patron. It's going to more than likely be as a PDF, and you're going to deliver it to them. Now, in my system, in Iliad, it gets delivered, it gets posted on a server, they get an email, they access it from the server. But you may be delivering that PDF to their email, you may be printing it out, asking them to come in and pick it up. So that's kind of your choice of how you're going to deliver that article. But if you don't have it that way, or you're not getting it through a supplier, you're going to go in, you're going to find bibliographic records of the libraries that own it, making sure that they have the years that you need, especially if it's going to be a print journal. And then you're going to ask for the article. They're going to say yes, and they're going to send it electronically. I can't recall now the last time I've gotten an article in paper, probably 15 years ago. So everything comes in electronically. Once again, as I said, you deliver that as whatever works best for your system. And then once you've received that article, it gets updated and the request gets closed out. And there's no need for the library that provided it to you to have any more. Once they've sent it, they don't need to come back and have any contact with that request. And that's about it for borrowing of physical items and borrowing of articles. So now I'm going to move over to Satori, who's going to talk about lending.
Thank you, Elaine. Okay, so lending is sort of the other side of the ILL coin. It is when you are providing materials to other libraries and institutions. It's typically considered less complex. It's just a little more straightforward. Libraries are asking if you have something and if you're willing to lend it to them. So it's kind of a little more yes, no. And you don't have to really have as much contact as you do with, when you're doing borrowing requests with your own patrons. But it's still extremely important, especially when you're considering reciprocal agreements and consortium agreements. It's also, in my experience, a really good opportunity for student worker development and positions. It's a great chance for student workers to get entry-level experience if that's something that your institution is really pushing for. I've worked at places that definitely is something they see the library as something for student work to really grow at. So just something to keep in mind. Next slide, please. So first I want to just walk you through, this is a simplified version of the lending article workflow. And so when I say article, I would mean also like a copy request is kind of the same thing. So you can be talking about an article or a journal chapter, book chapter, kind of the same thing. So it's going to start with the borrowing library is going to send an article request to potential lending library. The lending library is going to check their electronic holdings and their associated licensing agreements, and also their catalog if they've got a large print collection, and determine if they can provide it. If they can't, they're going to cancel their request so it can just keep moving down the lending string and someone else along the line can fulfill it. If they can fulfill it, they're going to then either pull the catalog's material and scan it so that it's now electronic PDF format, or go ahead and download it. And then they're going to send that electronic article to the borrowing library. As Maureen said, it's almost always done electronically. I think the only time it's ever not is like when you're dealing with international copyright laws for the most part, when they have to send it by like airmail. And so then once the borrowing library receives the article in ILL, their records and software get updated, you provide it to your patron, and then the request is finished. Next slide, please.
There was a quick comment.
Oh, okay.
Receiving print articles still happens. I had 5 print articles arrive this week, all from Germany. So that's the international.
Yeah, I think MyBib has kind of helped with that, where you can, you can't save the PDF from that, but you can print it for them. But Yes, airmail is still a thing, still getting some in print. Okay, and so then the lending loan workflow, this is also very similar, except this is going to have the physical element to it. So the borrowing library is going to send the loan request to a lending library, and the lending library is going to receive the request, to check their catalog holdings, see if the item, if they have it, and then also if it's available. If it's not available, or if they're just not able to lend it for whatever reason, they're going to cancel it, and then it's going to move down the stream. If it is available, they're going to pull the item, update the request in the system, and then physically process it and get it ready to ship. And then they're going to ship the item to the borrowing library. Borrowing library receives it, updates their system, and then also updates if they put any kind of bookstrap or anything like that on that, they're going to update it physically. The borrowing library is then going to provide the item to their patron. Once the patron has picked up the item, used it, and then returned it, the borrowing library is going to return the item to the lending library. Once the lending library receives the item, they're going to update the system in their records, physically process the return. They get to finally remove all that paperwork that was on the book and close out their request. So again, it's really similar to the article workflow, except you have an actual physical item and you get to use the mailing services. Any questions so far? Okay, we'll keep going. Oh, all right, and so on-demand services, on-demand in the context of ILL refers to user-driven acquisitions that are triggered by an ILL request. And they can be purchased from any vendor. Maureen's already named a few. And you can typically articles are purchased and provided directly to the patron for one-time usage. But a loan, book, DVD, anything like that, usually gets added to the library's collection permanently. The decision to purchase an item instead of borrowing it is determined by previously decided on criteria, which is going to vary from library to library, depending on that library's needs, priority, and their budget. Okay. So an on-demand workflow, and this is the simplified version, there's going to be variation from library to library. Your patron submits a request because they want an item. You're going to verify the citation and that your library doesn't already have that material. And then using that previously agreed upon criteria, ILL is going to determine that it's better to buy than borrow the item. Then you're going to have the library purchase the item. When the library receives the item, you're going to update your system and software. And then the material is going to be cataloged, physically processed, and then cleared from ILL. And once that happens, ILL or your circulation department is going to notify the patron the material is available. And then the patron picks up the material and ILL considers the request finished. Does that make sense? Okay. Oh, you're so quick. So on-demand article workflow is even simpler because there is no physical aspect. You're just purchasing articles. So the patron submits an article request to ILL. ILL is going to, of course, verify the citation and also that you don't already have access to that article. And also look for an open access option. If you find that it's available through your own holdings or via open access, then you are just going to post the article, email your patron, and then your request is complete. Fastest fulfillment time. But if that is not the case, then you're going to let it continue through the workflow, and then ILL determines that it's better to buy than borrow. For my library, the criteria for this is if we have hit the rule of 5, and we're going to have to pay the copyright fee, and the copyright fee is higher than what it's going to cost us to just buy the article outright. So again, that might vary for your library. You might have something else, but that's pretty much our criteria for articles. So once you've determined you're going to buy, then you get to choose which is your purchase option. And this is going to vary from library to library and will probably depend on your institution's purchasing department, which I'm sure you all know you might not have any control or say or input in. But we've put a few of the big ones up there: Get It Now, Reprints Desk, which is now Research Solutions, and then publishers' websites and your direct buying. So whoever you choose to use, you submit the order to. and then the material is sent to you. It's usually a very quick turnaround time. And once you receive the article, it gets updated in your software, and then ILL posts or emails the article, completing the request. Okay, and that's all that I have. Does anyone have any questions about lending or ILL on demand? Okay, so I'm going to hand it over to Holly.
Okay, so another thing that a lot of people have questions about is international issues. And so the first thing is payment. So you have two different countries, you have two different currencies, and you have to figure out how you're going to pay each other. The first easiest route is, of course, IFM, which is the ILL fee management, no CLC. If you both have IFM, then it'll work and you'll be able to just do it like a normal request without any extra anything. However, a lot of libraries don't have IFM, or they might not even be on OCLC, or you might not be on OCLC. So the next thing you can try is called IFLA vouchers, which is the International Federation of Library Associations and Institutions. And they're these little cards, they're laminated. And you can mail these. I tend to mail it back with the book that I borrowed, or if it was an article, then I'll mail them separately. They come in two different variations. There's the full voucher, which is green, and the half voucher, which is red. The lending library will decide how much money you have to pay for it. So for example, as me as a lender, some places I'll charge, like 3 of the green vouchers because it costs a lot of money to mail it. And I include shipping it with my international charges.
Looks like we have a couple of comment. Fingers crossed for an IFLA payment option sometime in the future that is handled virtually, not via physical vouchers.
That would be wonderful.
Then the second one, medical libraries also accept payments using EFTS.
Okay. Okay, the next big international issue is shipping. There's several ways you can ship. You can ship USPS, you can ship FedEx, UPS, whatever other courier. But you have to know that you will have to fill out a customs form. This is the dreaded part of the international shipping because it is a pain to figure out exactly what they want on the customs form depending on which courier you use. So for example, this form here is for USPS. To me, that is the easiest form to fill out. It's very straightforward. I can just enter in on their website the weight of the item, what it is, a little bit of a description. It's very clear. The worst thing that I do is FedEx. FedEx, I think, has the worst customs form because they want a very specific line about what it is. So you're having to look at all these codes to find, like, is it a book? Is it a library book? Wait, how does that even fit in there? Why don't they have library book as an option? So we have to do all that. The other thing is the other library might say, we want you to put this specific line on the package somewhere. Something like tariff 7.3 interlibrary loan, or in their language, what interlibrary loan is. They may have something specific they want you to put on the package. Okay, some additional resources. That first link up there is this ILL dictionary. Those in the room, you got one of these in your folder, and it has a list of all of the jargon and information that you may need. Those of you that are on Zoom, you'll be able to follow that link, and we should be able to have this posted when we post everything at the end of the conference. The next one is the ALA Interlibrary Loan Code, which everyone should read because it does have the responsibilities of both the borrowing library and the lending library here in the US. And then the next two are just some extra things that you might want to learn about from an ALA. Some other additional resources is get on listservs. You can ask your fellow ILL professionals whatever you want. No one's going to make fun of you, and it's always going to get answered. So the first one is ILL-L, which is just for interlibrary loan. Indiana libraries, which are all Indiana libraries, but you can still ask ILL questions on there. ALLI Connect, which is the academic libraries of Indiana. And then, for example, whatever your software that you use, they'll probably have some type of listserv or community that you can use. We put up ILLiad, because we're all ILLiad libraries. Okay, so now we're entering to the panel portion. So you can ask us anything about the presentation, how we handle specific ILO situations, staffing and students, workflows, how we collaborate with each other or with other departments. Basically, just ask us anything.
There is a comment saying that Facebook ILLers group is also great, and then it has a little
Oh,
link to
okay.
it right there, so good to know. Facebook ILLers.
Yeah, anything you can get on to is great, because you can talk to other people.
So yeah, the Facebook one is kind of funny sometimes because people will put up like requests that they get from people and it's, it's entertaining. You're just like, that doesn't make any sense. Or like recently someone posted that they had a faculty member who's going to ask for 1,100 children's books. And how would someone else handle that they're gonna get 1,100 requests? And most people, because I still think it might skew a little bit towards academic libraries, they're like, we'll fill them. We will get them in for them.
It looks like we have a couple other comments.
Okay.
One, my library is currently using iAndShare. I'm wondering if with WorldShare and OCLC, do they also require Excel sheets for documentation, or is it all on a website?
So for WorldShare and Iliad and Clio and all of those kind of Tipasa, all those systems, everything's online on their website or in our client-based. I'm not sure about Evergreen. Is that all on there? Do you have to keep a separate?
Oh, no, it's all integrated.
It's all integrated.
And then Indiana Share, is that?
That's what you need to send.
Yes, yes. And we need you to fill those out, as Maureen had mentioned before. As a lender, we need you guys to update the state library so that we can finish our request, because we can't do anything with it once you return the item if you haven't told us you returned it. And we don't know that something is lost in the mail if you haven't told them you haven't received it.
And another question, what copyright information do you share when you deliver ILL materials to library patrons?
When mine, because it gets delivered as a PDF, mine has a cover sheet that has copyright information on it there. And also when they create an account within Iliad, there's a copyright statement within that before they can create the account.
Yeah, we have a same thing. We have a disclaimer on our cover sheet.
We have a disclaimer in the email that we send. And basically it says the copyright disclaimer as well as a get it now disclaimer, because for get it now, you can only have it saved for so long. I forget if it's like 30 days or what it is. So we have that on there as well, that they really should save this, print it, know that it's going to be deleted. And if you're saving electronically, you can only save it for so long based on our get it now contract. Questions from people?
So I'm from a public library, so maybe it's not as applicable, but for on demand, do you get requests for basically self-published materials? Willing to purchase those if you're not, so they're harder to enter libraries.
So,
Yeah, I was at a smaller library previously, and that did come up for often, surprisingly. And we did, because the criteria we set didn't really account for that. So if it was under the price point and published within where I was, it was like the last 5 years. If it met the criteria, we did purchase it.
Say for me, I can choose what things get purchased, but when I do see something that is self-published, I'll present that to our dean, because she's like our collection development librarian as well, because I don't want to make that call. And for the most part, she does not purchase those. Occasionally we have, but for the most part, she generally turns them down.
and for ISU, we are the same with the predetermined criteria. We're not allowed to judge the material. We're not allowed to say pretty much anything about it. It just, if it falls within the criteria, or I can't get it anywhere else, I will also purchase it. We do have surprisingly a lot of self-published books. And I actually find that those ILL later a lot more than the other ones, because no one else has them. So you're kind of opening yourself up to be a better lender because you have more of these self-published books. I will say, as a cataloger, those are a pain. And so that's the only thing is if you do decide to have a strictly criteria part, you can always add that in the criteria saying, no, we're not going to do self-published books because our catalogers don't want to have to publish or catalog them. But if you do decide to do it, make sure you've had that discussion with your catalogers to be like, if we get these, it's going to be a problem.
We have some questions in chat. Does anyone know if Ian Share can be used to request documents?
Jen,
Yes, absolutely.
yes, she says absolutely.
Cool.
So yeah, I filled, I mean, I certainly filled article
Yeah,
requests
we
for
can
it.
do article requests and book calendar.
And here's another one. I am from a public library. We have been using search for requests not available through Evergreen. We will now use Share. I have been on vacation and have not been an opportunity to use it yet. Is there a good contact for questions about
Leanne?
Share?
Yeah, Leanne or share at library.in.
They're sharing.
I shared up
Share at library.in.gov.
share.library@in.gov and contact Leanne if you have questions. Anyone else?
Do you have any suggestions for training student workers? I have 2 new student workers that just aren't picking up as well, and I'm still fairly new to ILL. So, do you have any training materials that you found, or do you just create your own?
What system are you using?
WMS.
So they have a lot of online tutorials. Have you had them try like?
I have not. I did them, but I didn't think about.
Yeah, so you might want to look at the ones that you use that you really liked, to maybe see if that will help them. I've always, with student workers, the way I learn is by doing. So, sometimes if you just sit with them and walk them through, that kind of helps. But,
I say, and I've had in the past, or how my little training sheet, sort of a cheat sheet for students, was actually written by another student, because I think that was easier than because I mean, sometimes I'm like, oh, I don't do these in this order, but I'm thinking they're doing it day after day. This is how, this is a better way for them to do it. And I often, for me, will try, if it's a possibility, it may not be in this case, is having another student train them, one that's already been doing it. But generally, for me, it's just the doing over and over again, and I said, and then there's this cheat sheet that they just sit there at the desk and they can go through the process. But as I said, I had another student write that from their perspective.
So to reiterate pretty much everything you said, I create my own materials. So we have binders. And for us, we have Iliad. So it goes through the cues of Iliad. It goes through how you go to pull something from the stacks, how you scan something. But I have them shadow. So if it's either a staff or if it's going to be a student, I have them sit down with that student. They're not allowed to do anything on their own until I know they have it. Also, I tried videos in the past, but then they were so hard to keep updated. So that was the only thing. Whereas if the documentation, I can easily go up there and update. And I have the students update that every time they leave. So when a student graduates, that's their project for that semester, is to go through all of the documents and say, this is what I do, and then I'll put notes that say, but we can also do it this way, if you want to do it that way. But
So another thing I also do, and my coworker, fortunately, I think is on another session, is I pillage from my circulation students. That's where I get my student employees from. I let her train them, like all the library stuff, so they know how to search things, do things. And then I'm like, oh, they're really a good employee. Now I'll take, because I don't have that many hours to offer anyway, so I kind of take them from there. So sometimes that helps me with my student employees, that they're just they already have some basic library background.
This is the first time we hired people specifically for ILL. They were not CERT people first. So I'm thinking that might not be our best.
it's also good, as
idea.
Victoria mentioned, to start in lending. That's the easiest, straightforward thing to start with. So I'll always have them start in lending and then add 1 or 2 new things as you go, so that it takes 6 months to a year before a student is actually trained to do everything that they're supposed to be doing. It is harder because you might have some downtime and you want to give them something, But I find that confuses them because the terminology between borrowing and lending and document delivery, it all sounds the same to them. So I try to keep it separate and wait for them to have something down before, okay, you have lending down, now we're gonna do borrowing, receiving, because that's completely different from lending, and then just add it on.
And one thing I always tell my students too is I'm like, every day you're going to have a question. There's always something that comes up that is out of the norm every day. And they're like, yep, okay, every day. And I'm like, so please don't ever hesitate.
Yeah. Make sure you have an open door.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's so much easier if they ask the questions than if they screw something up and then you don't even notice for weeks
Yep.
that something terrible has occurred.
Well, and I think they can be nervous. I think they're like patrons too. Sometimes I think they don't want to ask a question, so they won't. So it's good to be like, do you have any, like, prompt them, like, do you happen to have a question for me? And even when you kind of release them from the shadowing, still kind of, I don't want to use the word hover, but maybe like walk by for no reason and be like, how are you doing? Do you have a question by any chance?
We have a couple here in chat. Sorry if I missed this part, just noting that when filling article lending requests, most libraries do not want a free version that was posted to ResearchGate or academia or other non-official repositories.
That is very
Yes.
true. I just got something from a college that was the open access one. And it's not what I wanted. I wanted the official publication. So please do that. Make sure you're sending the official publication.
Yeah, I don't, if I get a lending request, we don't send like the OA version. If we just send it, if we have the actual edition.
I would say for me, sometimes I will actually, because sometimes I think, oh, this isn't as available out there in databases or something, like especially about towards the end of the string, I might actually conditional and say, hey, I don't have this, but here's where it is open access, just in case that's how they want
I
to do
think
it.
conditionals are more accepted because then we can say no, or we can say, okay, well, that's noted now in my request
Yeah,
that it's available here. So if I can't get the official version, then at least I can find that.
and that's how, I would do the open access. If I can't make it, if it doesn't pull up the real article.
Then with Iliad, is there a multiple copy option?
Oh, what?
Multiple copy option where you can like pick like
Oh,
book clubs or things like that. There's not. That's Jen. She's like, darn it, I really wish there was. But no, there's not.
And then this one's a little lengthier. Do you all use OCLC cataloging? We're looking into getting our own WorldShare ILL subscription, excuse me, but we now use BTCat for cataloging, and it seems like a lot of ILL services depend on OCLC cataloging subscription too. For example, our Polaris ILLs can export ILL requests to WorldShare, but it seems like showing WorldCat catalog via Z39.50 requires the cataloging sub for some reason.
Okay, we'll answer the first part of that. OCLC cataloging. Yes, we do. Yes.
yes.
We do. As far as the rest of that, sounds like something you want to ask OCLC at some point.
Tony, have any?
Let me say this, but cataloging subscription is not required for WorldShare ILL subscription. Basically, which that means is that you will be able to borrow only and not lend, because since you don't have your holdings in WorldCat, no one will know what you have. I'm not sure about the C39.50 question. That would be OCLC cataloging person, not me.
So yes, if you have questions about those kind of things, you should go ahead and contact OCLC. And anything else?
Honestly, we love questions. It's kind of fun.
Yes, Laura.
Since a couple of you have a smaller shop with fewer employees, are there any things that you don't allow student assistants to do that you keep just for like full-time or part-time staff members?
Yes, definitely. So I'm pretty much the only staff member. I do have part-time help for about 8 hours a week, which really just covers a few things in borrowing. So my students, they do everything in lending. There's nothing in lending that I borrow them from, except for looking up call numbers. I wait until they've been there at least a year before they're allowed to look up call numbers. And then in borrowing, they do receiving. They research the request. So when a borrowing request comes in, they'll look to see if it's open access, is it available in the catalog, is it available through our databases. They do that initial part for me, but they don't put anything on OCLC. That's strictly a staff. They pull document delivery, they scan document delivery. They don't have anything to do with billing, and no one else can do lending returns who's not a staff member, just because we don't want things to go to the wrong library. And then they do all of the shipping, except for international.
Yeah, our students mainly work on shipping, packaging. Our staff member, full-time staff member, does most of the actual day-to-day requests for lending and borrowing. And then things that need to be escalated go to me, and I handle all of the decision-making for on-demand purchasing for articles. So yeah, where I was previously, we had student workers doing lending, but I wouldn't let them touch borrowing because it was just a mess.
I say for me, because I only have about 6-7 hours of student help. I do all the borrowing and all the lending. But they pull the materials, they scan the materials. I have them, they open all the packaging coming in. So they get everything ready for the patron. So they put the stuff on the shelves and they do the shipping. So they scan, they ship. Any of the borrowing coming in, they process. And and then as I said, I do all the borrowing requests and I find all the lending requests as well. As I said, I don't have a whole lot of help, but it's about that 6-7 hours. So I just need them to do the things that I'm too lazy to go upstairs and do.
Any other questions?
Nothing on that.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you guys for coming. I hope you're enjoying the conference.
And